Your story is absolutely the most powerful thing you can use in no selling sales. Now, probably if you're a bit like me, initially I had a hard time telling my story as I used to think, why do people care about me? Why do people want to know the things I've been through? And I tend to not be a complainer, so I don't really want to burden anybody maybe with the difficulties I've been through. But I found when training a team, these actually come in really, really helpful. And I found it pretty much across the board. If you really want to connect with people, you have to let them in to your story, who you are, what you're about, and a lot of the times the adversities or difficulties that you faced personally, because people really, really connect with that, and it's the truth. So they learn a lot more about you, who you are, what you stand for, and what sort of set of beliefs you belong to when you open up and show this sort of vulnerability. Now, this happened to me when I was working with my business mentor, and we were looking, basically you have to draft a brief description of your life for like press articles and things like that. So whenever you're doing an interview or whenever you're doing a podcast, they have to have something that they can reference. And one thing that somebody picked up on, which I didn't really like at the time, was Danny Kelman has lived in 50 homes, in over 50 homes, and also been homeless. So he knows the value of a good home and what that really stands for. And I never really thought about it that way at all, because obviously I don't like talking about the homeless stints that I was unfortunately had to do when I was younger. I started my own business, which obviously didn't go very well when I first started, and I put everything into it. I quit my job, did all this stuff, and then obviously it didn't go well. So I ended up not being able to afford a place of my own to live in, which is probably the best way to put it. But I wasn't going to settle. For me, and it's funny, I actually found the yearbook in the UK that I wrote in, and I said basically there's either two options for me. Either I'm going to be massively successful, or I'm going to be homeless on the beach. And funnily enough, my life, I didn't have a beach, but my life plan ended up following that, which I kind of predicted from 16 years old, which was funny. But that's always really been my mentality with everything, because I would rather have nothing but know I give it everything rather than settling somewhere in the middle. And I think that's kind of helped me sometimes and detrimented me at others. But basically, the story is I've lived in over, I think when we were doing the actual maths, is it was actually closer to 60, but 50 sounded pretty ridiculous anyway. So we're able to use this. And the reason why I've lived in so many homes is quite simply my dad was in the military when I was younger, so we used to move around a lot. Then from there, when we moved to the US, he was a contractor, and so he was moving around a lot. And then when my parents divorced, I moved back to the UK and was living with my mom for some time. But then my dad got a house in England, so I also lived there also. So I lived kind of back and forward. And then I left home at 16, and I was pretty much out the house by 18. Once I moved to the US, back to the US. In England, you're considered an adult at 16. So I moved back to the US, and then by 18, I was out and I got my first apartment at 18. So from there, it was living a few different places, and then having roommates in different places and kind of moving around. And everybody knows how the roommates normally go. But I've lived in that many homes, and what's really, really interesting, I've lived in everything from the nicest. My parents had a house when I was younger in Coto de Caza, Orange County, which is one of the nicest neighborhoods in Orange County. You'll see it in like Orange County Housewives. That's where the majority of that is filmed. So my parents had a ranch in Texas. We had 20 acres. I laugh with clients sometimes because I tell them that I'm country, and they find that just absolutely preposterous as an idea. And then I tell them, well, we had 20 acres, 12 horses, a donkey, a goat, a pig, and 4 dogs. I don't really think you get more country than actually having a pig, a pot-bellied pig, and then we had a goat that we called Billy. But my mom used to train horses, so we ended up when moving from California, they wanted to experience the Texas lifestyle. to living in England, different homes in England as well, and everything from the highest form of living to the lowest form of living, which is literally being homeless. I've had terrible apartments. I've had really nice apartments. My first apartment when I was 18 was really nice. My second apartment was really nice. Third, fourth. And then when I started my own business, I had to give all of this stuff up, right? All these worldly possessions in order to really figure out, okay, I'm not going to become a slave to money. I'm not going to work for somebody in order to make money. I'm going to figure it out on my own and take my own destiny into my own hands. And I said to a guy who offered me a job once, as I said, like the samurais, I'll live or die by my own sword. Is I'll kill myself or I'll go out there and prosper, but I won't allow that to be in somebody else's hand, for better or for worse. So I was fully ready to accept that I could have ended up homeless indefinitely, and it was a lot longer than I would have liked it to. Certainly, I think it was maybe about a year and a half, maybe even a bit longer than that. I try and block it out for the most part, but yeah. So it was really my stubbornness that I was going to make this work. I even got to a point once where I rented an upstairs room off of my mother-in-law, my now mother-in-law, which you can imagine how fun that was. And then I think 2 months as I couldn't actually pay rent to her, which was made for an awfully interesting conversation with your we weren't married at the time, but with your girlfriend's mom, who was nice enough to take me in. So lots of heartbreaking, soul destroying conversations at that time. A lot of being made fun of. A lot of, oh, Danny's trying to do this or he's trying to do that, and not. It wasn't fun. What wasn't fun at all. That's why I really hesitated to talk about it. And then it seemed in interviews that's all they wanted to talk about. So is I found that once I became comfortable in my own skin and was able to, and to be honest, it wasn't really until I was pretty successful that I could really talk about the massively unsuccessful times, because it was still too painful to go there with that. But now I think it shows people what it really takes, and that they could be in literally any sort of situation to go from nothing and homeless in order to any situation they so choose. So a lot of the times for me with clients and people, it gives me a lot of understanding and takes me away from being judgmental. Is when people are struggling with, paying for things or whatnot, is I've been there, right? I've been there a million times. And I think it gives you the ability to look at both sides of it. So I still, I'm getting more comfortable with it now, but there's probably, as you can tell, these conversations are still difficult for me to have, to put on camera, to put into social media, because it was a very dark time in my life, very difficult time. But it has an end. And I remember listening to this YouTube video once, and it was this motivational video, and I think it was like Eric Thomas, or I can't remember the motivational speaker's name, but he said your lights are cut off, your bills, you can't pay your bills, you've done a meeting and nobody's shown up to the meeting, then you've gone for a sale, you failed the sale, and then your lights are cut off, your cell phone's cut off, and then this, that, and the other. But you're not going to stop, because you have I think it was, you're not going to relent, because it's not over until you win. And that was always my mentality: is you either quit or you end up winning. So I just wasn't really going to allow that to happen. And my wife asked me, and so, by the way, I don't think this is a stationary experience whatsoever. My wife once asked me, she goes, when will this endless pursuit of growth, of being the best you can be, or trying to achieve these things end? And I said to her, I said, well, it will end when I'm dead, because the issue is with success or any form of, I guess it's influence, right? Influence on the populace, influence on the world or the people around you, is if it's constantly positive and constantly helping and constantly productive. But at any moment, even after being massively successful, even after achieving everything you want to achieve, you could turn around and change and ruin your kids' lives and ruin your family's lives and do things that. So I don't think you can ever really stop in that pursuit, because you can ruin it at any moment. So even at the level I'm at now, which is by no means where I want to be, is a lot further than where I was at. Um, is I know that it's still a daily practice, and I think I used to do a lot of yoga, and I think that really helped me with that. Is it's going to be a daily practice of being better and being the best that you can be, that will never ever end. And I think I'm comfortable with that, and I think I'm comfortable sitting in that, and then being within that uncomfort that this is going to be a relentless journey for the rest of my life. So your story, no matter how bad it is, no matter how ridiculous it is I was touring with the leasing agent the other day, and he was unapologetically who he was. And he wasn't from the best place, you know, and he just completely went with it rather than trying to fake and put on all these pretenses. And it really, really worked for him on the tour, and it really, really worked with you. Is whoever you are, wherever you're from, you have a story. It's a unique story. It's unique to you. And I think once you really start embracing that and becoming who you are, becoming the CEO of you, and becoming an individual, then connecting with people becomes an awful lot easier, because you've connected with yourself and you've opened up that pathway to be able to do that. So use your story. Your story is you. You'll never be able to get away from it. You'll never be able to run from it. It'll always be there with you every single day, staring back at you in the mirror. So embrace it and use it, because once you do, I really do think it's a superpower, and allows you to really connect with people, because they start seeing the real you, and they start being able to connect to who you really are. And from there is a lot of business can be made, and a lot of success can come.